Hi guys, welcome to Game Changers. I'm Miss Gigi, and we're here today to talk about the 5 biggest mistakes people make when opening a daycare center. And believe me, there's a plethora of mistakes that you can encounter when opening a daycare center. That's why it's so important for you to invest in knowledge and information on how-tos. This is extremely important for you to do. Um, Owning and operating a daycare is no small task. You wouldn't purchase a house, and I tell people this all the time because I'm a real estate broker as well. You wouldn't purchase a $500,000 house without hiring consultation, without speaking to a realtor, without hiring a mortgage lender to walk you through the steps. Same thing for daycare centers. It is so many different ways to get in trouble, to get in head deep. Guys, people call me week after week after week about how much money they're spending out, and all it would have taken was them to call me first. Because I promise you, there are a lot of things you're unaware of, and it sounds easy, but once you get into it and you've spent thousands of dollars, you can easily not get approved. And I'm talking about people have decorated the buildings, gotten into leases, installed sprinkler systems, installed fire alarms, purchased all the equipment and the things that they need, and still cannot get their doors open. So getting the information on the front end of the deal is a game changer. And that's why we're here. We're here to change the game for you guys. We're here to bring you knowledge and information so that you're transitioning into opening a daycare, or if you're opening a home daycare, will be so easy, so simple. We're going to talk today about the 5 mistakes. I've got notes, so if you see me looking down, I'm just going over my notes because I don't want to miss anything. Number 1, guys, the number 1 mistake in opening a home daycare. I'm sorry, a center. We're talking about centers. And really, this can kind of go, the 5 things I'm going over today, it really kind of goes for both. So the number 1 is location, location, location. The building. The building is everything. If you have a building, you've got to know and understand your building. Just because you find this amazing building that could be a daycare, you do not want to just jump out there. The building has to be inspected for certain environmental hazards. You have to have a certain number of bathrooms in there, certain number of bathroom stalls if you're going to go over a certain number of children, or if you're approved for a certain number of children. These things matter. You've got to have certain buffer zones in between your property and your neighbor's property, especially if you're in a residential area. Your playground has to accommodate sometimes 75 square feet per child, sometimes 70 square feet per child, just depends on the state. But your actual playground has to accommodate a certain square footage per child. Do this place have the capacity to do that? So it's important for you to know and understand the building is everything. And again, I mentioned in my other videos, I would not go into lease with anybody until you first find out if that building is suitable for childcare. Now, say for instance, you're riding down the street and you have this address and it seems like it's an amazing building. The first thing you want to do is call codes. Call codes, the codes department. Give them that address and ask them, can a daycare be put at that address? Usually they'll answer this over the phone, especially if they're not too busy. If they tell you no, keep going. They can literally look at the address on their maps and all their things they have and let you know if that address is zoned or can be zoned, or if it's things around that address that would not allow for you to have a daycare. Some states you cannot have a liquor store near a daycare. Some states you cannot have a nail shop next to the daycare because of the fumes. Some states you can't have restaurants next to daycares. So this is extremely important before you put a lease on anything. And guys, you know, if I already told you how to negotiate that lease, if don't, get your butt in the workshop. You need to take the Daycare Center workshop. I would suggest anybody take that workshop before even you go and open a daycare, because there's so many things we discuss in that workshop. The Daycare Center may not be the right choice for you. It may be better for you to open up a home daycare in a residential area and turn that home into a daycare. It may be better for you to partner with a church or a community center based on what you're trying to do, based on the length of money that you have. So, you know, I teach you guys how to get in childcare without a lot of money. And I believe me, I have a plethora of shortcuts you can use and ideas that will lessen the blow. But at the end of the day, what kind of money are you looking at starting up with? Because if you're looking at owning a center, you're gonna have some money. You can probably do it with 10,000 if you take the workshop seriously. And then sometimes what I've seen happen is people don't take the workshop and they end up spending $30,000 and $40,000 and they didn't have to. And also, along with that, another reason why it's so good for you guys to take the workshop is that you do not have to open up. So say, for instance, your center has a capacity of 200 kids. You do not have to open up with 200 kids, which curtails a lot of that expense that you're going to have opening up in the beginning. We cover this in the workshop, but that's enough about the workshop. I mean, either you're going to go or you're not going to go, because knowledge is the new money, guys. You got to get the knowledge first. So building, location. And I do want to say this one more thing about buildings. Don't go into any lease. At least call me, text me, get the 45-minute consultation. Don't go into any lease without getting at least permission from codes, which is basically calling codes up and saying, can I put a daycare at this location? And then look at certain other things, because just because codes say, and this is the craziest thing, this is why it's so important for you guys to get knowledge, to get trained. Just because, well, codes has to say yes or no, but just because State Fire says yes, DHS may give you a no on that yes. Just because City Fire says yes, DHS may give you a no on that yes. Now they can't go against State Fire if they're giving you a no. So say, for instance, State Fire comes in and says no to the type of door you have up, which they will, because you have to have certain doors on the front and the back of the daycare. So State Fire comes in and gives you a no on the doors. DHS can override State Fire and say yes to that. But what if State Fire comes in and tells you that you can store cots in a certain place? Okay. And DHS is like, no, because that's a fire hazard, or that's a hazard from the children getting outside playing. So each one of them will bounce against each other on what is good and what is not good. But ultimately, the final say is your licensing center. If it does not constrict to fire hazards or environmental hazards or food and storage hazards. So it just depends. You have to be very careful there. And each one of them always disagrees with the other. Always. Want to tell you can do something, and the other one's like, no, you can't. No, you cannot. Because let me give you an example of one of the things that DHS is like, no way. And State Fire is like, okay, you can do it. So when State Fire comes in, they're not concerned, or at least they want you to have sockets, the little sockets, the plug sockets, protectors in each of your plugs. That's absolutely fine. And they're going to look for the plugs in each of the protectors. Believe me. So is DHS when they come in. But state fire is not going to require you to not have extension cords connecting other things as long as you have the fire receptors into the walls. But when DHS comes in there and sees, or child licensing, whatever it's called in your state, and sees extension cords, they're gonna flip out on you. So it's always a contrast of what you can have and what you can't have to get you started. Location, location, location. The biggest mistakes that daycares make is just because you see a big, nice building that is excellent for daycare in a particular neighborhood, and you open that daycare up, does not mean it's going to flourish. Does not mean that. You have to make sure you're opening up in a place that is conducive to the geographical area that you're trying to serve. So if you open a daycare center up in this amazing, beautiful neighborhood, but everybody in the neighborhood is 65 years or over, daycare is not going to survive. So knowing exactly what you need and where you need to go in purchasing or leasing a daycare business is number one. And I told you guys, and I think I've listed it in a couple of videos. I know we talk as intensively about it in the workshops. Is when you're getting that lease, when you're first going in, say you got the building, this is an absolutely amazing building. When you're going in, negotiate that lease. Negotiate those 3 months or 2 months that it's going to take you to get licensed. Because if state fire comes in and shuts it completely down, you're in a lease that you possibly can't fulfill because you didn't get approved. So be careful there. Number two, square footage. And I go over this and yet and still, square footage of usable daycare space. Let's talk about it. So you have this amazing building that you found, and it's 1,500 square feet. It's perfect for what you need it for. Guess what? No. In certain states, there's 30 to 35 square feet per child. Now, if you're doing your measurements on a naked building, you're losing. Before you do your measurements to find out how many children you can have in this building, or even if this is possible or doable, you want to place the tables, the cots, the bookshelves, the toys, the teacher's desk. You want to place these items and then do the measuring, because when child care licensing comes in, they're going to measure it. They're going to issue your license and measure it based on placed furniture. So, and that's another type of discrepancy that you will see come up. If codes department, because they have to come and give you a permit, give you a permit to have 50 children in there, DHS, child care licensing, is going to change that number. They're going to come in like, no way are you getting 50 kids in here. You can do 32 kids. And the only thing they're going to do is pull out a calculator, which you can do ahead of time, measure the square feet of it. And do I have my square foot? Hold on, guys. I may, if it's reachable, I will share it with you. It's actually a good tool to have. I use it in my real estate business, and if it's not reachable, I'm not going to be able to share it. I don't think it's reachable. But I have a measuring device, which is excellent. No, I can't find it, guys. Oh, there it is. Whoop, I found it. I dropped it, but I found it. There is a measuring device that looks like this. You can pick it up at Home Depot or Lowe's, and all you do is place it against the wall, and it's going to measure from the wall to whatever's in front of you. Okay, so that way you can take your own measurements about how much space you have after you have placed furniture. And remember, it's 30 square feet per child. Okay. In home daycares and in group home daycares, usually they don't worry about the footage of how many square feet you have per child. Well, they kind of do. You just need to have a big area for 15 kids because that's the maximum thereabout is the maximum you can have. And 15 kids is just one big family room. You can use that. So it's a little bit more lenient for home daycares. So make sure your square foot of usable space, because anything else is not usable, and they do not count the offices. They do not count the bathrooms. They do not count any area that the child is not in or is using. So keep that in mind. Number 3, knowing who comes first. Knowing who comes first. So knowing, because of the discrepancies I told you guys about, who comes first is imperative, because the very first person that's coming out to you, or the very first person you need permission, from 4 or 5 people, depending on the large amount of size of children you're going to have there. So it just depends on the number of children you're looking to have in your center. It's going to tell you who's coming. The very first person that has to give you any type of approval, even before child care licensing, is codes. So you want to deal with codes and regulations, the codes department. Like I said, you can even give them a call in some states and they'll tell you over the phone if a daycare can be there or not. That's the first step. The second step is applying with codes for the permit. You're still working with codes at this point. You have to get a permit. And in order to get the permit, in some states, most states actually, they're going to have to notify all the neighbors in your area that you're trying to get a child care permit. So it's not like you go down to codes and you sit there and they sign a piece of paper. No, they have to have a hearing. And in that hearing, they have to let the neighbors know. And if any neighbor object to you being there, that neighbor has to show up at that hearing and say why. Another thing is that a lot of times daycares, codes do not allow daycares to be less than 800 feet apart. So if it's another daycare at the opposite end of the block and you're at this end of the block, you're probably going to be okay. But just make sure you're 800 feet apart. And in some states, that number may vary. Check with your state. So the very first order of things is codes. You have to get a permit. And then once you get that codes permit, then you contact child care licensing and do the application process for them, which can be very lengthy. I can help you through that if anybody needs help in that, because sometimes that can be rather disturbing. So I would get the consultation, and during the consultation, just go through your application. It wouldn't take 45 minutes. So 45-minute consultation, and your consultation time can be getting through that application. So first step is codes, getting the permit. The second step is actually getting your application into Department of Human Services. And guess what? They're going to want some money. Of course they're going to want some money. Would it not be Department of Human Services or Child Care Licensing if they didn't want any money? They're going to want some money. Usually the application fee can range from $200 to $350 to $400, depending on your state again. But at least you know that a daycare can be there. And if you invest the $200 or $300 or $400, then everybody else is going to tell you. Now, sometimes you get a big no from State Fire or whoever. And even though codes have given you the permission or the permit, doesn't mean you can clearly open. But having an address, having your application into childcare licensing, and paying that fee gets the ball rolling for all of the other people who have to come and see you. That call to those people is initiated by your application and your childcare licensing program evaluator. So once your program evaluator has your application, then they're going to call before even they come and see you, because they don't care about how cute your daycare is. They don't care about if you got the right location. None of that matters to them right now. They don't care. They're not even going to get up. They're not even going to answer your calls. They're just going to make sure you paid your money. And then they're going to send out state fire, local fire, health department, environmental, and in no particular order. So you need to have all those bases covered and know and understand what each department is looking for before they come out. And this is the reason, again, I say those workshops are worth it, because you're going to know what they're going to expect. You're going to know that in a daycare center, you've got to have automatic doors that automatically close by themselves. This will save you so much time and money. If you call these people and DHS is not waiting, they're going to call, and honey, you do not want to be put back on somebody's desk waiting on you to get your stuff together. That could take an entire 30 days. So say, for instance, environmental comes by and you didn't know that in a daycare center, your trash cans have to be sitting on concrete slab. You didn't know. You didn't know. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to say, oh, well, Miss Butler, I tell you what we're going to do. We're just going to come back. How long do you think it'll take you to get concrete slabs in there? And you're going to say, oh, a couple of days. Well, I tell you what, send me an email and let me know when you got those concrete slabs in there, and we will come back out then. And I promise you, you're going to be waiting about 3 weeks before they return. And this can go down this way with everybody that has to come. So why not know exactly what they're looking for before they come? Do you have to have urinals? Do you have to have mop sinks? Do you have to have employee bathrooms? Can the employee bathrooms be with the children bathrooms? Good questions, huh? Things you need to know before you spend a dollar. Things you need to know before you rent a building that does not have adequate bathrooms. Things you need to know before you get all these inspections done, and then the last person inspects you is environmental, and they're like, nah, you don't have enough bathrooms. You need to add a bathroom. And that's delaying your opening day at least another month. Because when all these inspections have been done, each one of them will send you a certificate. And then once childcare licensing has all of your certificates, which you need to make a copy of and send to them. Do not leave it to State Fire to send to them, even though they say they're going to send it to them. No, send me a copy, email me a copy of that. And you literally have to walk your stuff through, because your stuff will literally be sitting on somebody's desk. And by the time you finally get in touch with somebody after the mini vacations and their off days and, you know, all the stuff that they do, you finally get somebody, oh, your paperwork was sitting on Mary Jane's desk. I got it now. We're going to get started. We'll be out there next week. 45 days later. So knowing who comes first and what they want, what they're going to look for is key. Now, when you take your orientation with childcare licensing, they're going to give you contact information, and they're going to go over a little bit about what these people want. but they are not touching the surface of what really goes down, because in that orientation class, they cannot tell you what these people want because they've never seen the building. You could have 3 exit doors. You could have 4 exit doors. You could have an old restaurant that has a freezer in there that's not usable, but it's still there. They're going to make you get rid of it. So it's so many triggers in the game that you need to be aware of. And I wouldn't dare get into any massive business that's going to cost so much like this if you're taking the wrong turn without consultation, without some type of mentor, coach, something. All right, let's go to number 4. My absolute favorite. Number 4 is if the math ain't mathing. You got to make sure the math is mathing. You have this big dream to open this daycare center. You always wanted to open a daycare center, and guess what? You've got the perfect spot. It is now time to open the doors. But before you open those doors, make sure the math is mathing. Understand and figure out if you're going to be taking children 2 and up, if you're going to be taking infants, and how much teachers, how many teachers you're going to need, how many part-time teachers you're going to need, how many full-time teachers you're going to need, how many subs you're going to need, how much is payroll going to cost you, how much is your lease versus how much does the electricity cost in that area, how much is your food, how much is your water, how much is your payroll, how much are your employer taxes? Because you do not want to be caught up, and at the end of the day, you're opening and operating, but you're not making any money, which makes no sense. If it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. Overhead is huge in daycare centers. Payroll is a killer. Payroll, and the thing about daycare centers, you can't shortcut payroll, because then you get into supervision violations. You do not want to not splurge or not leave room for adequate coverage. Just don't want to do that, because you're going to open yourself up for a can of worms. And guys, let me give you just a tidbit of information. It's a tip, because it happened to me one day. Nap time, teachers are napping, and you all should already know that you've got to have coverage for your teachers during nap time, because the babies are napping, and most times at nap time, that's when teachers go to lunch. Usually, I will train you guys how to have auxiliary office staff and use that auxiliary office staff during those lunch hours, where you can get all your teachers to lunch by using your auxiliary office staff to go into the rooms and allow them their breaks. Okay. Well, one of my teachers one day decides to go out her side door and take trash to the trash bin. Just as the moment she's taking trash, she's at the trash can, putting the trash bin in, whoop, up comes DHS. Remember, she left her side door open and she went to just 3 feet in front of her to dump the trash. So DHS happens to pull up very near that side door, and they get out and talk to her, and they already know from the moment they hit that property, they're on lookout. So she went to that side door just to see if it was another teacher in that room, and it was not. So we got in big trouble for a supervision violation. You don't ever want supervision violations. And you can't control everything your teachers do. So this is why I train you how to put systems, fail-safe systems in place so that this has ever happened, because you can't watch every little second. But if your teachers know the rules and your teachers know what they should do if they need to do this, you have systems in place, it will aid you in not doing that. So you got to have adequate coverage. You've got to have adequate supervision. And so you've got to make sure the math is mathing. You got to make sure that you have enough income coming in and not just cash flow. Cash flow is totally different than profitable income. Anybody can open a business, anybody can run a business, but is your business making you money? Because at the end of the day, if you're planning on being the director yourself, you want to pay yourself some money. Oh, and let me throw this in there. Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's my number 5, actually, because I actually had only written down 4, but I'm going to make this one number 5. And I was going to just throw it in here. But guess what? Number 5, knowing the type of entity that your child care center should become. Knowing the type of entity that your child care center should become. What is the basis of your business? Are you Montessori? Are you faith-based? Did you do an LLC? Are you a sole proprietorship? That stuff matters. And depending on what you're offering and what you're doing, have you considered a 501c3? Have you considered being a nonprofit child care center? What type of child care center are you? That is important. That is the first thing you should determine, because a lot of people just open the doors as a regular daycare. And what are you offering that's different? And if you're faith-based daycare, why not partner with a church who has a building that they're not using? And then you got backup. You got other people willing to invest in your business. Churches love to see daycares on their property. Not to mention they're going to make money, but it shows part of their community service. And if you've got a nonprofit, or if you're really cool with the church and you're really cool with the person, you can open an umbrella under their 501c3, which means when you go to Walmart, you're tax exempt. You can apply for certain grants and get them because you're nonprofit. You can get computers for your daycare. You can go to Home Depot and get them to donate. Everybody donates, especially to daycares, especially to nonprofit daycares. So consider, what type of entity do you want to be? For profit, or do you want to be nonprofit? Do you want to be an LLC? Do you want to be an incorporation? Because an LLC is different totally from a sole proprietor. One of the things about being a sole proprietor is that if a child gets hurt, even though you have insurance, the people can sue you as an individual because you're a sole proprietor. So that means they can attach your home, they can attach your car, they can attach your investment property. Serious stuff, guys. But if you're an LLC, limited liability corporation, or a INC, an incorporation, then they cannot attack you personally. They would have to attach the business, or they would have to sue the business, the corporation, not the individual. So it matters very much what type of entity you're claiming. And be very, very, very careful of claiming sole proprietor. Because even though you have your name, ABC Daycare Center, on your bank account, because your bank account asks for that information, if you have yourself listed as a private entity, a sole proprietor, Anyone can freeze your bank account. If something is connected with you and you owe IRS money, or you owe student loans, or you owe somebody money, they can freeze your account because you are a sole proprietor. So entities are extremely important for you to know and understand each entity, and then base it on what you're trying to do. Are you Montessori? If you're Montessori, you can also get a 501c3 and give grants for Montessorism curriculum. If you're faith-based, look for a church that has this large basement that's perfect for a daycare that you can use. So 5 mistakes. We killed it. We nailed it. Hey, we nailed it. All right, guys. I love you guys so much. Thank you for all the comments, concerns, the amazing phone calls. Every time somebody calls me and they're telling me I'm going to open up something, I get so excited, genuinely from my heart chakra, because it lets me know you're thinking independently. You're tired of working for someone else and you want to work for yourself. And you want to leave the matrix. So that's my whole thing, applying and allowing you the opportunity to leave the matrix to work for yourself. Have an amazing day, guys, and love on some kitties today. Love on some kitties. Bye, guys.